Hello, everyone. I'm Diane Donnelly, and I am with the Donnelly group of Keller Williams Flagship of Maryland. And welcome to our series of Facts Not Fears, where we discuss a whole bunch of different topics, but it was born from a lot of confusion that I heard during COVID about different topics. So today we're going to be talking about being a great landlord. And I am absolutely honored to have Mary Groven with us. She is the principal of a family-owned and operated company called First Choice Management, and she is local property management, and she is local here in Odenton. And I will tell you that I don't know if I know anybody in this industry, in the real estate industry, that knows more about what Mary's going to talk about than Mary. Anytime I have a question about property management or what can and cannot be done, Mary is the person that I go to. 35 years of property management experience. Mary, tell us a little bit about yourself and welcome.
Oh, thank you. Well, I've been a licensed realtor forever, I think. Something about dinosaurs were running around.
I saw you that day.
That's right. But anyway, so I have always enjoyed property management. I started out with my family's properties and my own properties, and this kind of graduated into a different realm, a different way to go. My background is not in property management. I actually have a degree in engineering, but it was not a good fit for me.
It was sort of like it's sort of like an RV fit for you.
Yeah. right. My father liked it, but I certainly did not. So when I told my father, I broke it to him, and I believe it was '89 that I was going into real estate, he cried. But I'm very fortunate that he lived long enough to see me succeed.
It's wonderful.
Very happy. The property management is just something that I breathe, eat,
and breathe you do. Mary, you know more about this industry, honestly, than any single person that I know.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for being my resource. I appreciate that. And at the end, we'll talk about how to get a hold of you, because I'm sure after this call, people will have some questions. So when we're talking about property management, you're talking about managing somebody's property for them because they have an investment property, right?
Correct. So there are lots of different lots of different owners that we have. We have investors who purchase homes just do them as rentals, and we manage them. We have the homeowner who, for some reason or another, is not able or does not want to sell their home, but is being transferred out or has to leave that home to go to another one. We have about 70% of those.
Oh, so really? I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, so that's most of ours. We do have several builders who buy up properties, and I myself buy up properties for rentals. I have a kind of a thing I like to do. I like to go to the new construction people, and I like to buy them in the first phase, last day of the month. Usually I have a pretty good portfolio, so I can present a good deal for them. They snatch it up because they have quotas to meet it, and I rent them until they build out, and then I sell them. So that's, I'll tell you, we did that little thing.
Yeah, we did a few of them, and it can be very lucrative because you're buying at the early stage, hoping that prices continue to appreciate while they're being built up, and then at the end, you're done. And if we do it right, and the market agrees with us, we've got some built-in equity as soon as we sell it. I love that. I love that. Okay, well, Mary, being a landlord is not for everybody. I was a landlord, would continue to be. I have that tolerance. But there is a tolerance that you have to have, because you have to be able to put up with people living in your home and maybe not taking care of the home the way that you would take care of the home. But having 35 years of experience, what would you say the critical characteristics are of somebody that, for somebody to be a great landlord?
Patience. I sometimes refer to our company as the little UN. So it's peace and conflict resolution. Yep. So we're the go-between the owner and the tenant. So we need to make sure that, things are working smoothly on both ends. We work for the owner, but we have to make a happy tenant, because if we don't have a happy tenant, then we have an unhappy owner. So it
Yeah.
goes both ways. So I would say patience, understanding, and the ability to listen and not get too stressed out about the things that are happening around you, because you can't always control them.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that takes all kinds to make a world, but in this business, we've met them all.
You have met them all, and I've heard some of your stories. Mary, you just said something that I want to underscore. You said in this business, because it's a business, and
It is.
And I have spoken to not really investors, people that have an investment property, right? To somebody that maybe just didn't sell their home and now they're a landlord, didn't have enough equity maybe to sell their home, so they moved on but kept their home, so they're not really a landlord. And one of the things that I've heard over and over is, you know, I let the tenant slide this month. They had a bad experience at work, or they started to fall short on this, so I let them slide. There's no sliding. You can't let them slide, because this is a business. And once you do it, and Mary, I'm going to guess, because I've only had a handful of properties, you've seen it all. Is it okay to let a tenant slide even once?
No. So you have to have a standard, and you have to maintain that standard through all of it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be compassionate and you can't work with a tenant and help them find the resources that they need. I mean, through this COVID issue, the pandemic that we're going through now, I have worked directly with my tenants. We have like 1,100 doors. Okay, so we're fairly large. All right, I only have 9 tenants that are behind and are affected by this COVID.
Wow.
That have not reached out to me to go and to help them with the resources they need to get it. There's Maryland money for rents. There's federal money for rents. Each jurisdiction has its own different set of monies and the way they're going to distribute it and how it's being distributed. So staying on top of that, staying in communication with the tenants has made it so it's not been an awful issue with us. There were a couple tenants that, you know, decided that, oh, I don't have to pay rent. I heard on Facebook, I don't have to pay rent. Owners aren't paying mortgages. But we were very quick to squash that and give them the actual information they needed to understand that, yeah, you do have to pay rent. And there's a big difference between forbearance and forgiveness, and which was the biggest thing out there for the even owners with the mortgage companies were talking about forbearance, and they're all thinking they don't have to pay their mortgage for.
And that it's going to be forgiven.
Right, but it's not. It's tacked on, or the arrangement is made to pay it in full at the end of the forbearance period. So you have to be very careful with that type of stuff. So we worked with owners and the renters throughout this. When it came to an issue that a tenant was having, we would work out a payment plan. We would never just let them slide.
Right, and that's the big difference is the difference between having a property manager like you managing and you managing your own property is you can get very easily emotionally involved with the tenant. So they talk about their story and you're getting sucked into it because you're a kind human being. And all of a sudden now the one situation has come into several months, and now you're burdened because you don't have the money to pay. So it becomes a very difficult situation. This is why I always tell people, if you can afford to get a property manager, get a property manager, because you are not emotionally involved with that tenant. It is a business dealing for you. It's an emotional thing for the landlord.
Right. And that's one thing I tell all the landlords when the owners, when we first start our journey together, I tell them, you have to take all the emotion out of this property. This is not something emotional. This is strictly an investment, a cash issue.
Commodity at this point. It's a commodity at this point.
It's a thing. It's not a person, and you have to go it. My very first house that I rented, I drove those poor tenants crazy. I would go by the house, and it was the first house that I rented that I lived in, I would say, because I moved out of this house, thought, oh, it's a cute rental. We'll just rental. I drove them nuts. I would ride by, there would be weeds in the yard. I'd be banging on the door. This is a weed. Do you know what a weed is?
You were that landlord.
Right. I was that landlord. And then I had to take a step back and go, oh, whoa, this is what you tell them not to do, you know, because we will have landlords that come up and say, hey, they're not trimming my rhododendrons on a basis. So, and the other thing we always tell at the beginning of our journey is that no one ever lives in your house like you do.
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect it to be like you left it.
Yeah.
Either you can have the best tenant in the world, but it's never going to be what you do.
Mm-hmm. It's different. What's involved with being a landlord? People think, okay, I'm just going to collect a check every month and that's it. But what is involved with being a landlord?
Oh, so, well, it all starts from I'll just start from the beginning. It starts
Okay.
from putting the right person in the right home. So there's a process that we go through to make sure that person fits in that home. We're not going to put someone who is struggling to make ends meet in a home that they can barely get to. So we always look at a debt to income ratio, and we always make sure that they are below the 42%. That way, when life happens, they have a little bit of wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
We don't put someone in a house that is at the bare minimum where they can manage the house, but they have no money extra.
Mm-hmm. Not different than buying a home, Mary, right?
No,
Same thing.
right,
They have to be able to afford it either way, whether they're renting or buying. So you do the same sort of calculations if somebody was buying a home.
Correct. What did you put in front of the screen?
Oh, you can't see me?
Oh, no, now I can.
Okay, there we go. I have a question right in front of me, so I can remember to ask you. It's my little Post-it note to remember to ask you a question.
Oh, okay. So then we do checkups. So we are always, communication is a key. So we're always communicating with the tenants and the owners on all the things that are necessary in the house. There's the maintenance. We require homes to be maintained. So we're not going to take someone who's just going to say, no, I'm not going to fix that. No, I'm not going to fix that. They're going to need a different property manager, because we do need to have the things fixed in order to maintain the home so that they can maintain a good cash flow. The rents are coming in. I have tenants that have complained, the dishwasher doesn't work, so I want $50 off my rent until the dishwasher works.
Mm-hmm.
It's an appliance. It's not something that is necessary to have. That's our job, to talk that tenant through that situation to make sure that they understand that it will be repaired, but it's not at the top of the list. It's not like you have fire, no heat, no air conditioning, that type of thing.
So Mary, you had said at the top of the call that you are the go-between, and that's really what you are, because when we do a deal together, if I have a seller or a landlord, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we communicate with you, you're going to do the property management. You're really handling all of that. The landlord, for example, the one that we're most recently dealing with, he's getting ready to move to Italy. He really doesn't have a concern about his property because he knows it's in your hands.
Right. And then we handle all the nuts and bolts from that. So like there was some issues with his roof. Okay. The roof, they put on 40-mile-an-hour wind, and it's that particular house sits up in an area which is quite common to get 60-mile-an-hour winds. So we worked with the builder, the roofer, the insurance company, because he's out overseas or wherever he's located at that time. We're the one that's going between. We work with the sellers, the owners, insurance companies on a disaster. And that is something that I want to make sure we circle back to as to what kind of insurance an owner needs to have.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you that question too.
Okay. So, it's a lot more than just collecting rent and going by and looking at the house. During this COVID, we actually worked with each of the tenants to do virtual inspections of the house. So what we would do is we would ask the tenant, can you walk around, and these are the things that we need you to check and make sure. I'm sure if there was a tenant that was in violation of something, he wasn't going to show me the big dog that he's not supposed to have.
Right.
But you know how many of them, when they're panning their room, don't take that dog bowl up, or the big bag of dog food, that we ask questions about and things like that. And it's not that we don't want pets. We just want them to be responsible for them pets.
And to be honest about the pet that they do have.
Right, right. And actually we are starting a third party pet verification now in our system. We've been verifying the pets, but now we have a global company that can verify all over the United States versus just, Maryland, DC, Virginia.
What do you mean when you say verifying pets?
So when we verify a pet, we verify that their license, their vet records are up to date, that they don't have a bite history or anything like that. They don't have a noise issue. We are now going we just signed up with them this morning. As a matter of fact, we've been dancing with each other for a couple years, or a couple months, I should say. And now I'm going to go ahead and bring them on board.
Wow,
So
that's
they're
fantastic.
actually going to verify and keep us in compliance with HUD and ADA, because there are so many rules and regulations about, service animals and emotional support animals and things like that, and there's so many guidelines on it that it's made it very unclear for the landlord or the owner to understand what their responsibilities are and what their responsibilities aren't, and who they can and cannot talk to about it.
And if you have a property in a jurisdiction, let's say that, I know that in Prince George's County, for example, pit bulls are banned, right? Is that still the case, or they were?
Yeah, well, pit bulls are one of the breeds that PG County will not register and prefer not to have in any rental properties. However, cannot be breed specific as if it's an emotional support animal or they're no longer called emotional supports. They're called you have your service animals, and then there's the, I can't remember what they just renamed them.
Renamed it. Oh, that's okay. Yeah. So that's it. If you are a landlord and you have a dog in your property and it bites somebody, are you responsible in any way for that?
Your insurance should cover that, but yes, you can be sued. So they're going to sue everybody involved in it. If it's a horrific bite, if it's somebody who just likes to sue a litigator, they'll sue the tenant, they'll sue the property manager, and then they'll sue the landlord. So I'm kind of in between, the buffer between the the tenant and the owner. So, I mean, he's last to get sued.
Yeah. Okay. What is the number one mistake new landlords make when they are taking on a client, their first tenant, for example?
No background check.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, even as simple as going to Maryland Judiciary Case Search, and all jurisdictions have that, or something similar to it, all the states. That would be the best thing. People who have had problems, and you and I just recently came across this.
Yes. Amazing.
Yes. So people who have problems and are having issues with the rents and being paid, or are in default or something like that, tend to stay away from people who use professional people to rent, manage their homes, because they feel like they're more able to get over and their past doesn't come behind them. And I think the person that you and I were talking about is that they went to your owner, and you called me because we verify your people. And then I was like, no, we've terminated her lease because she can't make her payments.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And your tip was, why don't you guys check out, have the person check out the judiciary case? And the lady that came to us said her credit is a little bit damaged, but not bad, but she's got a perfect history. And she went on and on about how great her history was. And it wasn't, but that case, that solved the entire problem. Now, had you not told us to do that, and if I didn't, I'm not going to say the word require people who I represent for sellers or for the landlords in this case, I always tell them to go through you, because you know your stuff, you know what to look for. And in this case, you've experienced the person who had the perfect credit scenario that wasn't the perfect credit scenario. So that person didn't get that, and it saved thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for my landlord.
When I'm glad. But when you put the wrong person in a house, it is a detriment. People who know how to play the system, play it and play it well. And you need to have someone who knows that system equally as well, or is as versatile or can pivot very quickly to get that up there. I have an excellent legal background, not myself. I mean, I have a lawyer and someone who works with HUD and works with my lawyer and everything, so that we try to stay in a good environment, so that we don't step on those lines that we're not supposed to step on, but we're also not putting people in homes that takes forever. I mean, for instance, in PG County, it's hard to give an explanation now because it's absolutely ridiculous right now. And we could go through some of the COVID things if you want. But in a normal state of the world, PG County, you don't even get in for almost 60 days to get your failure to pay. So if you don't pay in January, I may not get you in to court for January's rent until April. And then,
Wow.
I'm going to have January, February, March, and then April. And it just depends on how that keeps going. And you have to have somebody who is versatile in all of the court systems, so that they're able to file every month to get that back up, so that when you get to the fourth one, it's without right of redemption. So, because, if they didn't pay in January and you can't get in, let's say till the beginning of March, all right, you're in court, and then you get to court, they give them till the end of April to pay. They pay January's, that's, into April. So when you got the sheriff coming, they pay January's at the door. You still have February, March, and April before.
And you're still paying you're still required to pay your mortgage.
Right, and you can't get them out.
Yeah.
It's a horrible game. And then there's so some of the things that have happened here, and I don't know if you want to go into that with the COVID.
Yeah, I would like that.
They are, they're worried about there being a mass amounts of evictions when this COVID is up, because of the people that aren't paying. And the rents, I think, are down totally 12, 13%, which is not as bad as we thought it would be. I thought it would be.
Do you mean the vacancies, or when you say down 12%, the values?
The delinquencies.
Delinquencies down. Oh, really?
And that's across the board. Okay. That's not mine, but the National Association of Property Managers takes a survey every month to see who's paid and where they're paying and what's going on. And it's not pinpointing people, but it gives you an idea of what you are at, or where, the skew's going. But the laws right now is all evictions are stayed. Okay. There's no evictions. So while the evictions are stayed, you can have, the career renter, as I like to call them. Mm-hmm. And they've decided, I don't have to pay, because if I don't pay, I'm not going to go. So,
and you don't need any proof that there's a hardship, Mary. You just don't have to pay. We're
requiring proof, okay? Because the way the law is written, it's written that is someone who is affected by COVID. Mm-hmm. I mean, the courts are shut down, so you're not going to get them out anyway. But in order for you to be in the first line of the court system, to get in the first lines of being seen, you're going to make sure that they're not affected by the COVID. And it hasn't been. And that's where the communication comes in. And, I'm asking for documentation. I have a standard form that I have them fill out. And it says, did you lose your job? Are you getting unemployment? Did you get a stimulus check? It goes through all of the financial stuff. If they don't fill it out, they don't get it back to me, well, then they're not in the program. And like I said at the beginning, I only have 9, out of the 1,100.
That's incredible.
That have not
that's encouraging.
Filled that out. I have about, 15, 16 that are working within the guidelines and have gotten money from the counties and the state to help with their rent. They use their stimulus like it was supposed to be used. They're getting the unemployment. We helped them go and fill out for unemployment. What that was a disaster, the unemployment. But we worked with them on it. We made payment plans. We've done everything. And like I said, We have the 9 that are sitting there.
So Mary, let's say that somebody has a tenant in there that hasn't paid, let's say March, April, May, and then everything gets lifted. You're allowed to do evictions again. And I'm certain that all the landlords are going to do different things to say, let's get you whole again. So are the choices going to be, okay, I'm going to exercise my eviction, you're 4 months behind, or maybe they'll say, okay, I want you to pay me 1 month and then you owe me 3, and I'll divvy that up to get you whole.
So those type of payment plans should have been worked out before the evictions are lifted. So you should be working those payment plans out with your tenants at this point, for anyone who needs it. Once the eviction, so the courts open up I think they open up, well, depending on which court jurisdiction, I think they're opening up on the 15th. And I'll be happy to share with you what their phases are.
Yeah, I would like to know that.
Evictions are not their chief priority. I'm not going to be able to get anyone out until at least October or November, based on the scenarios that the way the courts are open. Each county and each jurisdiction. So like in, there's Baltimore City, there's Baltimore County, there's Anne Arundel County, there's the city of Annapolis. Each of them have their own guidelines. They've made their own little world on how they're handling it, and they've passed emergency legislation as such. So let's say you have a tenant that hasn't paid January, February, or March, and their lease is up in March, and they're in Montgomery County. Well, the easiest thing to do would give them their 30 days notice to vacate that you choose not to renew their lease. Well, in Montgomery County, you can't do that. Wow. You're not allowed to tell them that they have to get out.
Wow.
So, but they can tell you that they're not going to renew their lease. So I have friends that, or have some issues over there, and they're actually, some of the property managers are paying people's security deposits to get them out. So the owner
encouraging them on their own accord.
Right. So they're 4 months behind. The owner thinks this is a great market to sell. Got a lot of owners that want to sell. So it comes up where lease renewal, it didn't have anything to do with the COVID. They were going to sell, and they can't tell the person to leave to sell. It just makes no sense to me how you can lift up one, type of individual and hold the other one hostage, so to speak.
Yeah.
But, so some of my Montgomery County and my Howard County peeps have been paying, hey, I'll pay your security deposit, I'll pay your moving expenses or something. The owners have been doing that, so they get their house up on the market.
Could they say, I'm going to forgive your last 30 days, but you need to give, okay. Right. So they can get creative. They're just not allowed to evict, but they can encourage people to move on.
Right, you can encourage, but it does take, you have to be able to work in and out of that. I mean, an average Joe's not going to go. I mean, we have someone that we all know and love who has rental property, and he's pulling his hair out because he wants someone out and he can't get him out. And he's like, I'm just going to go and throw him out. And I'm like, no, you can't do that.
Yes, I'm going to shackle you. You can't go there.
Out. We will be visiting you in jail for real this time. So, yeah.
It does. It baffles my mind. I had a situation, you probably know way more about this than I do, but down in Southern Maryland, I had a property owner, and he lived in the home, and he took a young man in who was challenged and having some trouble. He took him in, and the family moved on to where they were going to move, and I was going to sell the house. He wouldn't leave the house, but he had more rights than the seller did because the seller had invited him in. He wouldn't get out of the house. We couldn't sell his house. He was a squatter. Is that a squatter?
Yes, that's squatting. Yeah.
I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that a homeowner can't get the young man who he was helping out of his home when he was trying to sell it.
And so the moral to that story, so that everybody knows, you never let anyone stay in your house without a lease.
Really?
Once you have a lease, they are a tenant, and tenants are handled differently than squatters.
And can you say to this challenged young man, I'm going to charge you $1? Does there have to be consideration for this?
There does have to be consideration.
So it could be $1.
Right.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
squatting thing blows my mind.
the lease trumps a foreclosure. If you have a valid lease, and it has to be valid, it can't be something that you just made up, whatever. A valid lease, and the tenants have been paying and the owners haven't been paying and we've had this happen, haven't been paying their mortgage, and the house goes into foreclosure, and the tenant's sitting there, and they come to, hey, I bought this house at auction last week, and that tenant's lease is valid through the balance of it.
Wow. Even through a new homeowner who has no idea,
so then,
may have no idea.
Right. So then the homeowner is now, the monies would then go to the homeowners, or a judge would decide which direction it would go. Because the banks sometimes have stepped in and said, well, that rental money comes to me. So
Right. So all little things. So I wanted to do a little quick fire question and answer with you. Is that okay, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay. Should landlords keep utilities in their name, or have the utilities in the tenant's name?
The only utility that is attached to the house is the water bill. Okay. We put them, it's our process to put them in the tenant's name, so the tenant gets the bill, and a copy is sent to us when it is in delinquent. We will then pay it and then take it out of the tenant's rents and make them pay it to us directly. But if you don't put it in the tenant's name and they don't pay it, you really have no recourse to go back on them.
For just the water.
Right.
Do you have the utilities, all of the utilities in their name copied to you, or just the water, because it could get attached to the home?
So on the electrics and the gas and electric companies, what we have is an automatic turnover on those. So we're notified if they turn off or they don't pay, or from whatever reason. We can then, if they turn it off, we're notified that it's going back into our name, because it'll automatically flip into our name. If it's turned off for non-payment, they won't put it in our name, but they'll notify us that it's been turned off for non-payment. That way we have the option to put it in our name. And there are reasons that you want to make sure that the electricity is still on, even though you want the tenant to pay it. I mean, there's sub pump issues, there's gas issues, there's things, there's heat, pipes that freeze, so forth, like that.
Right. Good points.
So we have, the key is communication. So we communicate with all of the utility companies and, the water bills, and we make sure that they're all, coincide.
Mary, if I had your job, I would have no hair. I'm like quivering even thinking about if I had to do that with 10 different people, and you have 1,100 doors that you manage.
Yes.
And you have hair.
But I have a wonderful staff too.
I know you do. I talk to them all the time.
Yes.
And you know what I appreciate so much is you have 1,100 doors. You're a busy company. And yet when I ask questions, I always get the right answers, and you take the time to explain it as opposed to just pushing us aside. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Question number 2, what type of insurance should landlords have?
So landlords need to make sure that they change their homeowner's insurance to a landlord's policy. And this is very key. And you make sure that you have fire in it. If you do not change your policy and you keep it as an owner's policy and not a landlord's policy, if something happens in your home, a fire, and it is destroyed, your insurance company will not pay for it. Now, on the second hand, if it was the fault of the tenants, our tenants are made to carry at least $300,000 in liability insurance, which would pick that up. But that goes very quickly if it's like a townhouse and it's destroyed 3 or 4 townhouses. So,
and you get a copy of that. So when they get it, you're required. And if a tenant decides, I'm going to, just to pacify this requirement, I'm going to get it, I'm going to send it to Mary, and then I'm going to cancel it, you're going to be notified as a third party, I guess.
Right. Well, we have to be named on the insurance.
Yeah.
And we have to be named on the owner's insurance also, so that we're notified if the owner doesn't make the payment. Because, as much as we want to say, oh, the tenants are all bad and everything, it's equal.
Yeah.
I have equal issues.
Oh, I've definitely heard of bad landlords. Is umbrella insurance important?
So I personally like umbrella insurance, but that would be a preference to them.
Okay. Not required, but
Not
something to
required,
consider.
right? Something to
Okay.
consider.
If somebody fell on your property, a tenant is renting your property, they have a couple of friends over and somebody falls, what insurance covers that?
The tenant's liability would cover it.
Tenant's liability. Okay.
So for instance, we just had a tenant who had a party and somebody accidentally flushed something down the toilet because it was being raided. Ha ha ha.
Oh, that kind of thing.
Yes. And it jammed up the toilet, but he's on the third floor of a condo, so it went all the way through and damaged all the way down. His insurance, the tenant's insurance covered that, not the owner's.
Okay. All right. That's important to know. What is commingling of funds for a landlord? I've heard
so that's
some trouble with this.
all right. So most of the commingling happens with the security deposit. Landlords take the security deposit and think it's theirs to keep. It's not. It has to be put into a separate escrow account. It has to earn interest, and it has to stay there. They don't get to touch it until the tenant moves out, and it's to be used for rents that haven't been unpaid rents, damages, so forth and so on. And there are things that you have to be careful about with that security deposit also. We'll go down that road just a second. If you say, okay, I have $1,000 security deposit and a $500 pet deposit, they can be kept in the same escrow account, but they have to be accounted for separately. So when the tenant moves out, let's say they did $2,500 worth of damage, but there was no pet damage. It was just they're not paying rent, the utilities, didn't cut the grass, whatever. Okay. And so the owner says, well, I have $1,500. The owner does not have $1,500. The owner has $1,000. The other $500.
Really good point, Mary. I never knew that.
Yeah. The other $500 has to be returned to them.
Okay. Really important.
For someone who is starting out with property management, and it's not a landlord, maybe it's someone who wants to go on to be a property manager, commingling of funds is really important because you don't want, all the tenants are going to pay their rent into one. You're going to pay all the owners out of that one. If you're using someone else's money, say you have an owner that decides, hey, I want to keep $700 a week, a month in there so that, you can pay my taxes at the end of the year or something like that. I can't use that money for the shortfall of the other person. So it's very important to have a very good accounting system on that.
Right. Okay. How do you establish a fair rental price for a property?
So I look at the market and see what it will bear. And then I look at the condition and see where we are in that. And we're pretty good at it. One thing we don't want to do is we don't want to undermarket a property and get someone in there, say it was market value when they moved in, and then not raise their rent ever. They've been there 10 years. So we've just set that tenant up for failure, because let's say he was paying $1,500 for this 5-bedroom house. He's never going to find a 5-bedroom house for $1,500 again in that area. So it's very important to check the market every year, every renewal, to make sure that you're staying within the market range.
Okay. Owning and managing rental property, it's a business. Where would somebody go for resources to find out what the laws are, say locally, in the state, nationally, those kinds of things?
Okay, so I have this Bible. I don't know if you can see it over here.
The blue one?
This one right here.
Oh my gosh.
There's 2 of them. That's the Maryland, that's a property annotated code of Maryland.
Oh my gosh. So you go to Mary's office to get it?
And I research it and update it constantly. The way I do it is I involve myself in all of the legislation. I am on executive committees in Montgomery County, Howard County, Annapolis. I stay involved in the legislative updates and things like that. I read a lot. There isn't every day I'm reading 3 and 4 articles on property management, what's changing, especially in this environment right now, because it's changing so quickly and it's so fluent. I mean, today it's this law, tomorrow it's this law, and they are laws. They're passing this legislation through constantly. Each county has a legislative webpage, so to speak. So you would just go to Montgomery County legislation or Anne Arundel County legislation, and you would look at all the new laws, and you would have to look down and see if there's anything in them that.
And look at landlord tenant laws, Anne Arundel County, for example.
Right.
Okay.
So, like most people don't know, in Anne Arundel County, you have to have your dogs registered. All your pets have to be registered. Costs $2. But
I bet a lot of people don't know. Remember, Mary, you and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about there's a maximum security deposit that you can charge,
right.
and you can, and the dog, how that played into it. Can you talk about that for a second?
So that's a Maryland law, and I actually think it goes over federally. But in this state, you cannot charge more than 2 months of a security deposit, and that includes any pet deposit that you are doing. This area is now moving into pet fees. So instead of paying, you'll pay $500, $1,500 rent, and for each pet you're going to pay $25, $40 a month on pet fees.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course you'll have the additional deposit. We never charge a pet deposit. We always charge additional deposits.
Additional deposits. And one of the things the reason that came up is there was a lady who didn't have great credit, and she said, I'm willing to pay a 5-month security deposit or 6-month security deposit because she had cash, just not good credit. And you guys said, oh, you can't do that. Be very careful. And you talked to ways around that,
right.
But to be careful because everything is peachy keen, everything is going well until something doesn't, and then everything comes back up. And where you thought you were doing somebody a favor has now come back to bite you by
right.
letting them in on a term that they suggested, although it doesn't meet the law.
Right. So when there's cases like that, I mean, we kind of shy away from them because they like reek of fair housing issues. But some ways that people can get around that type of thing are prepaid rent. You can have your 2-month security deposit, and then you can have prepaid rent.
Thank you, Mary.
But they have to be kept separate.
Separate, just like you said. Okay, and what about people that are saying, I am, we're going to be in a market, I think, where there's going to be some fabulous buys. There's going to be some properties that would be a great way to build wealth. As a first-time landlord, first-time investor, and people are going to say, should I manage the property myself or should I hire a property manager? Of course, your property manager. You said everybody should be should do it. No one should do it themselves. Everybody should be. But what is the litmus test, sort of, if somebody should do it themselves or hire a property manager to do it?
So it would be how unemotional they can be in the situation and how calm they can stay in bad situations. And it is really, it really is a trying, and how it's trying on your mind, how, what people do. I can go into a house and it can be filthy. It can be absolutely filthy, but I can't tell that person unless it's a health hazard. So there's a line. You have to clean your house.
And house is nasty.
Yeah.
House is nasty.
My house, maybe my idea of clean and your idea of clean may be something totally different. I have a best friend who I want to say is just a borderline of keeps everything. It would drive me nuts, not her. So you have to be out of it. You totally devoid yourself of all emotions for that property and that person. And that doesn't mean you can't be compassionate if there's an issue, but I'm really sorry that's happening to you. Let's see what kind of resources we can find for you.
Right.
But the rents do need to be paid.
That's right. That's the difference.
The way it needs to go. For I can tell you, Heather learned really quick. One of the first people, she calls up this guy. She came to work for me, and she's calling. I said, here's a list of people I paid their rent. So call the people on the rents and see where they are. So she's calling, and this guy goes, oh, can I call you right back? I'm at my dad's funeral. Well, she is beside herself. She puts the phone down and she's so upset. I called him and he's at his dad's funeral. And I'm like, Heather, how many people answer the phone at their dad's funeral?
Oh, good point,
You know?
Mary.
So
Right.
seriously, you think, but you got to keep that distance.
You got to keep that business perspective.
Right. I mean, I would answer the phone at my dad's funeral. Nobody's more important. So,
Exactly. Right.
yeah.
Mary, how much does it cost for property management?
So it varies on the different property management people and how their business is set up. My business is a straight 10%, and I don't charge anything above that.
10% of your monthly rent.
Right. So I don't charge a fee for putting together your maintenance. So like some property managements will say, okay, it's on a flat fee of like $99 or $150. But if you want me to ACH your monies to you, that's going to cost you an extra $5. And then if you want me to go and do drive-bys, that's going to cost this much. And if you want me to do interior inspections, it costs this much. And so we just flat fee it. It's 10%, covers all the things that we do, the services that we have, and we work through it.
That includes your background check. They're going to pull the credit.
So those the tenants pay for. Okay.
Yep.
So when a tenant applies with us, they're actually paying for that background check to be done, and they pull everything. And I can't tell you how many people say I have the greatest credit and I have the best rental history, and they come back and they're like, "Who is this? You?"
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, when I had somebody that was, I think it was in the 400s, the credit score was in the 400s, and they said they have stellar credit. So I guess it's kind of like your friend. It's, everybody has a different idea of what perfect credit means.
That's true. That's true. Oh,
So Mary, is there anything that I haven't asked you that we should know?
We're great property managers, but you've said that over and over.
You are absolutely the go-to. I wouldn't rent a property on my own anymore without having a property manager. I don't want to be in the middle of that. And second of all, the laws changing so quickly, I'm not spending time keeping up with that. It's not in my wheelhouse. It's not something that I want to do. So I wouldn't do it myself anymore. I did plenty of that, and I wouldn't want to do it anymore. And I've had a lot of luck. I've had a lot of very positive situations. It is a great way. We talked about all the difficult challenges, but it is a great way to build wealth through real estate.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I think that your side, your property management, is one component to consider when you are building your portfolio.
Yes.
Angie, do we have any questions in the chat?
There are currently no questions. There are 2 comments of thank you so much for the valuable information, and it was very appreciated to bring this to everyone.
Good.
Oh, great.
Mary, I think I could talk to you literally all day about this stuff. The stories that you can share, first of all, amaze me. The way that people can, their perspective of life, that's all. It's shocking. And I just appreciate everything, all the information that you brought to us. And Mary, if somebody wants to reach out to you, here's your information. Is there a preferred way for them to reach out if they have questions?
Nope, that's perfect. That'll go right to us.
Fantastic. And everybody, thank you for joining. And for the people who are going to watch this live, if this is helpful information, please share it on your page. If you know somebody who is considering being an investor or buying real estate, please forward that to them. We appreciate you getting the word out, and thanks. And Mary, thank you for your time, and everybody, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All righty. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.